All right, everybody, buckle up, because today we're going deep. We're talking the 7 habits of highly effective people. Well, at least the first part, just to get us started.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big book. Lots to unpack.
It is. But this first part, the foundation, the stuff about paradigms and principles, it's kind of mind-blowing.
Oh, for sure.
So, full disclosure, we're actually working from a podcast episode, like another podcast, that summarized the book.
Very meta.
Right, a podcast summarizing a book. But honestly, this episode was packed with awesome stuff. So are you ready to get into it?
I am. Let's dive in.
All right. So Covey starts off talking about these things called paradigms. Basically, there are mental maps, the way we see the world. Like, have you ever noticed how we can get stuck in a certain way of thinking?
All the time. It's like wearing those blue tinted glasses.
Exactly. Everything looks blue, even if it's not. And the thing is, we're often not even aware of our own paradigms.
Right. We just assume our way of seeing things is the right way. And that can be a real problem,
Big time. And that brings us to what I thought was the most powerful line from the podcast. If you want to change your life, you must start by changing the way you see the world.
Yeah, it's like a little slogan, but it's so true.
Right. Like, think about it. If our mental model, our map, is all messed up, we're going to keep getting lost.
It affects everything. How we connect with people, how we work, everything.
Oh, totally. I remember this one time, I got into this whole thing with a friend because I completely misinterpreted a text message.
Oh, I've been there.
It was like I was seeing it through a totally warped lens. If I had a different map, the whole drama wouldn't have even happened.
We've all got those stories. It just shows how important it is to question our assumptions, like really make sure our mental models are in sync with reality.
For sure. And Covey doesn't just stop at paradigms. He also talks about these things called principles.
Right, principles.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Principles, they're like the universal truths, the laws of nature, but for human behavior. I'm talking about fairness, honesty, integrity, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And what's cool here is how Covey distinguishes between principles and values. Like, values, they can be pretty personal, kind of subjective. But principles, those are constant. They're objective. They're like a moral compass.
It's like that feeling you get when you know you're doing the right thing, even if it's hard. That's a principle guiding you, right?
Yeah, I think the podcast used the analogy of a compass, which is perfect. Principles act like that compass, pointing you toward true north, toward long-term success and fulfillment.
Okay, I love that analogy. But how does this all tie into effectiveness? Like, why are paradigms and principles so important if we want to be, highly effective people?
Well, because Covey's whole argument is that real effectiveness, it comes from aligning our actions with these timeless principles. And to illustrate this, he introduces something called the maturity continuum.
Maturity continuum. Okay, now you've got to tell me more about that.
Sure. So basically, it describes 3 stages of personal growth. We start with dependence, right? Relying on others.
Okay, dependence makes sense.
Then we move to independence. This is where we can do things on our own, be self-reliant.
Okay, so dependence, independence. Is there another stage?
There is, and it's the key. It's called interdependence. And this is where we realize we can achieve way more by working together, by collaborating, by leveraging each other's strengths. It's not about going it alone. It's about recognizing we're all in this together.
So it's like the difference between a solo musician and an orchestra.
Perfect example.
Both can create beautiful music, right? But the orchestra, it just has that potential for something way bigger.
Exactly. Think about successful teams, thriving communities, even healthy families. They all operate from that place of interdependence.
Wow. Makes you think about where you are on that continuum, right? Am I dependent, independent, or interdependent? And how can I move more toward interdependence in different areas of my life?
Yeah, such an important question to ask ourselves. And this is where it all connects back to habits. Because Covey's saying effective habits, they aren't just about the actions. They're deeply rooted in our character and the principles we live by.
So before we even get to those 7 habits, we need to take a good hard look in the mirror.
Exactly. The podcast ended with these 2 really powerful questions.
Okay, me.
Are my paradigms accurate? And do my actions align with principles like fairness, integrity, and service?
Oh man, those are big questions. Like really big.
Right. But they're the foundation. The self-reflection, it's where it all starts. The 7 habits themselves, they're like the practical steps to build on these principles and become truly effective, which we'll, dive into later.
So just to recap what we've talked about today, paradigms, those mental maps that shape how we see everything. principles like that inner compass guiding us toward effectiveness, and then, of course, the maturity continuum and the power of interdependence.
It's a lot, but it's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, just the beginning.
As we move forward, I think it's worth reflecting on this. If you could shift one paradigm in your life right now, which one would it be and why?
Food for thought. Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you next time.